Hello everyone, and welcome to this brief talk on the importance of API management tools. My name is Matt Tanner, and I'm a product evangelist here at Tyke. Really excited to be here today to share my knowledge on API management and showing everyone how API management platforms can help with API development. Since every organization and developer needs different tools for their needs, I will go over some features which will likely be important to helping you with the development of your APIs. Let's get started. First up, what is API management? If you are building APIs, then likely you belong to one of two camps. Those who know about API management platforms and are using one, or you just simply don't know about them. Once you see the power of these platforms to enhance your API development and offering, I have a feeling you'll quickly become a fan. Most simply, an API management platform helps you to build, support, and manage every aspect of your APIs. Today, we will focus on all the wonderful things that the right API management platform can do to make your life easier. If you're unfamiliar with API management, get ready to see some pretty amazing features. And if you are familiar, hopefully I can supply you with some info on features that you could consider to use in the future. As with most solutions, API management platforms generally have lots of different components. And those can include a gateway, a dashboard, developer portal, and others depending on the exact solution. These components, working together, provide the features I will discuss today. And as with any piece of software or infrastructure, there are going to be concerns about API management and performance. And I'll briefly touch on that as well. All the features and benefits I refer to today are fully available within Tyke's API management platform. If you do have any questions or comments, please reach out to us on our social media feeds or drop us an email through our contact page on our website. Now, at this point, you want to get started with API management, but you aren't sure of where it fits in your architecture. The platform itself actually sits in front of your APIs, acting as a gateway that all traffic must pass through in order to access your built APIs. And those are also known as upstream APIs. When it comes to actually deploying the platform, there are generally a few options. Well, here at Tyke, we offer the following. You can go with a self-managed deployment. So you would create the infrastructure, deploy Tyke, and handle all the configuration of Tyke. And that can be done on bare metal servers, private cloud, or on a public cloud platform. You could also use our cloud SaaS offering, where we take care of the deployment and configuration, and with this you just log in and you can get going right away. There are some configurations that are different though, and that's from a security perspective. So we actually lock down a few features. So this option is easier to manage, but slightly less configurable than the previously mentioned self-managed solution. And lastly, you could choose to go with a hybrid model where we take care of all the platform components via our SaaS solution, except for the actual gateways. So you deploy your gateway nodes and then hook them up to the SaaS control plane. One of the biggest concerns with API management is the latency added by this component. So this is a valid concern, and there's going to be some latency added. There's no way of getting around that. However, we've been doing a lot of testing at Tyke lately, and we believe we have one of the most performant solutions out there. So in terms of latency, it's extremely minimal. With proper tuning and infrastructure sizing, you can get the latency numbers really, really low. Sedkey, one of our solution architects, and myself actually hosted a webinar a few months back, which demonstrated this through a performance testing means, but we show exactly how little latency is added by the platform. If you're concerned about latency, you can drop us a line after this presentation or get a hold of us on one of our social media platforms, and we'd be happy to get you the link so that you can see exactly what numbers we got from during the webinar. And we also publish those numbers in a blog. I think you're going to be really impressed if you are concerned at all with the minimal amount of latency added when you choose to put Tyke into your offering. Developing an API and getting it ready for production can actually take quite a while in most organizations. An API management platform can really aid in reducing this time by giving you a lot of features right out of the box, like security, rate limiting and quotas, transformations, and a bunch of other features which you no longer need to worry about writing in your service code. Developers can then focus on implementing core features in the service and leave the necessary nuances to be done in the API management platform. At Tyke, we have made our dashboard so easy to use that even non-technical team members can configure endpoints. So overall, you should see a significant decrease in the time spent getting your APIs developed and ready for production. Now, moving into actual features within an API management platform. Probably the most used would be the ability to configure authentication and authorization. If you've ever worked to bake security into your endpoints, then you know that it can be a pretty big pain to get it working correctly. And if you have multiple services, you may end up implementing it a bunch of times across all of them. Well, with API management, what you can do in these platforms is you can actually configure all of this stuff in one spot. And then that means you can pull these things out of your services. Managing everything in one spot obviously makes things much easier to manage from a security perspective and from a development perspective. With Tyke, we support a bunch of different types of security and protocols, including basic auth, OAuth 2.0, JWTs, keyless APIs, OpenID Connect, mutual TLS, and a bunch of others. Our list of supported tech is always growing. Next up, we have virtual endpoint functionality. This functionality resembles the serverless functions that you have available on a few different cloud platforms, but allows you to do it directly in the API management platform itself. So with Tyke and virtual endpoints, you can actually plug short JavaScript functions at the end of a route and have them run when the endpoint is called. So no external services needed to run these or any of the corresponding infrastructure for that service to run on. So generally, you would need a service to run your functions, and then on top of that, you'd need the infrastructure to actually host it on. None of that is needed when you build virtual endpoints in your API management platform. This functionality is very extensible, and I highly recommend that you check out exactly how it works. So if you want to know a little bit more about how Tyke does it, you can actually Google Tyke virtual endpoints, and you'll see some links to documentation around the subject, which shows different use cases and a few examples. Endpoint mocking is one of those features that you really don't think about until you need it. Normally, when we develop a front-end app, we have to wait for the backend to be finished, or we just create local mocks. As we can probably all relate to as developers, local mocks are a real hassle to get going, and they really don't aid with our overall integration. With endpoint mocking, which is really easy to do in a platform like Tyke, you can mock out the endpoints on the actual API management platform with live endpoints. No more need for local mocks for front-end dev or other services that are dependent on your endpoint creation in order for them to proceed with development. So you get a live endpoint, you can mock it out, and then when it's actually the service in the background is implemented, flip the switch, mock goes away, and you're right into the live service. And because you are connecting to the endpoints on the API management platform itself, you can tackle integration really early. And you can get away with not developing workarounds that are sometimes needed when using local mocks. This functionality is super useful, and with Tyke, it's really easy to get started with. A staple in API management is the ability to control the usage of your published APIs by applying rate limiting and quotas. For the uninitiated, rate limits generally depict how many requests a user can put in at one time on a smaller scale. So usually expressed in requests per second, also known as RPS. Quotas depict how many times an API can be called, but usually in a longer period of time. So you may limit a user to 10,000 requests per month at a rate limit of 10 requests per second. All of this can be configured right in the management tool itself. And with Tyke, it's super simple to do this within the Tyke dashboard. As mentioned, this functionality is really frequently used, so it's important to know how easy it is to configure all of this within an API management platform instead of using some type of internal service to do this same functionality. Recently, I published an article on this specific subject of request and response transformations, also known as body transformations. I called it the no-code legacy upgrade, and in it, I outlined how you can take a legacy SOAP web service and pop a new JSON RESTful interface on it with no coding involved. Most API management platforms support body transformations, where you can take an input, apply a template to transform it to another format, and then end up with the output that you need, whether that's coming from a request going to a service or a response coming from a service back to the client. With Tyke, you can do body and header transformations for requests and responses. This can really help to cut down the effort needed to update interfaces. In the case of SOAP web services, using this tech, you'd be able to create a JSON endpoint that uses the underlying SOAP service with no changes being made to the SOAP service. And that means that existing consumers of that SOAP service can still continue to use that service. And your new clients or new consumers can use a RESTful API style endpoint. All of this functionality can be used to make production-ready endpoints in minutes. Even though it's simple, again, this is some very powerful stuff. This may not be the most exciting, but it is something that's necessary. So versioning APIs and making multiple versions available, it's really, really easy with an API management platform. And kind of as a side note, if you start thinking about how quickly some companies iterate using iterative methodologies or agile, you might have multiple versions of an API floating out there. You might even have weekly releases of it. So with a tool like Tyke, you can configure all of this through the dashboard and easily expose certain or all of your versioned APIs. This may not seem overly exciting, but versioning your APIs and exposing multiple versions of APIs without using an API management platform is a little tougher to do. So, definitely it's going to cause some headaches if you do outside of the API management platform for API developers and for those working with the versioned APIs, and it just makes it a whole lot easier to use a platform to manage all of this stuff. So next, we're on to analytics and reporting. Data is at the forefront of everything we do these days. Keeping track of that data, sorting it, analyzing it, making it digestible is really not an easy problem to solve. Luckily, an API management platform will allow you to track all incoming and outgoing requests and responses, any errors that occur, and any other data points that might be relevant to your API operations. With Tyke, for example, you can drill down into data at a very granular level so that you can see exactly what you want without a bunch of other noise. And this can all be done, again, through the Tyke dashboard, where everything is built into the UI. Basically, a couple clicks, and away you go. So you'll find that most API management platforms allow for relatively robust reporting, and that means that you can also generate reports very simply and easily. You can also integrate this reporting and analytics with other tools as well. One of the most common things that comes to mind would actually be integrating with a service like Splunk. So with Tyke, forwarding your analytics into another platform like Splunk is actually really, really easy. Hey, API owner, could you give me access to your new shiny API? So I think most of us have heard this. We're building something new and someone wants to start using it. Many companies are now building APIs that others want to use. Whether that be internally or externally, it's always been a pain to give access to your APIs, as sometimes it means making changes to configuration or updating security policies manually. With the developer portal, that would be included in an API management platform, you can have users sign up to subscribe to your APIs or certain APIs and have a token generated. And that may come also with correct rate limiting and quotas to be applied to that consumer, and you can manage all of that stuff centrally. This is a huge feature for those who are looking to have developers using their services to be able to self-serve. And another nice little piece of Tyke is the fact that Tyke also allows you to easily customize the portal so you can fit it to your brand and styling needs. We'll go over this one quickly, but I do highly suggest jumping into our documentation if you want to see how extensible an API management platform can be like Tyke. So something specific to Tyke is the ability within our platform to really customize the platform to fit the needs of your business and your development. Our plugins and middleware, they're all customizable so that the API management platform can change as your needs do. We like to think of it as it allows you to think outside of the box in the most full sense instead of getting you stuck into one. You don't want to bring a tool on that isn't going to be able to scale with you. And API management platform like Tyke really allows you to be able to do that. And we will take a few moments here to talk about how we can use our APIs to get our hands on a little more of that almighty dollar. Monetizing APIs is something that has been picking up steam for years, and generally setting up the infrastructure to do so has been pretty cumbersome. Well, worry no more, because with an API management platform, it can actually help you to create the registration process to get developers signed up and paying to use your APIs. And using the developer portal that we discussed a few slides back, you can actually have the process automated on your end while developers self-serve, which is quite nice. So at Tyke, we've spent some time recently showing our users how to integrate with a service like Stripe to create a really slick looking UI to start bringing in the dollars and leave payment processing up to, again, a platform like Stripe. You'll be able to find videos on our social platforms and on our YouTube. And in a few minutes after watching those tutorials, you should be able to start generating some cash flow from your APIs. It's actually very simple. And, it's something that if you have data that other organizations need, this might be something you want to consider. If you do have data that other organizations or developers can use, this may be a great way to start generating some extra revenue. And if you're already doing this, maybe you're already monetizing your APIs, but you want to make it a little simpler. Maybe an API management platform could help make signups easier and management of your paying user accounts easier as well. And the slide that all of us here at Tyke are looking forward to the most. So this slide encapsulates everything that we are really excited for at this exact moment. For the past while, we have been working on some industry firsts in regards to GraphQL functionality within our API management platform. Very shortly, this functionality will be available as Tyke's 3.0 release hits shelves and servers in the coming weeks. And there's going to be a lot of stuff surrounding this that we're going to be putting out, and we're really excited to show it to you. As part of this release, we have added the ability to use your existing GraphQL services with our gateway to provide granular permissions and security. That's a big pain point for many folks using GraphQL services. Plus, we have a whole bunch of other features that will augment your GraphQL offering and help with some of the other concerns with these types of services, including DDoS attacks on GraphQL endpoints. So you get all the power that Tyke has to offer, but now you can start applying this to your GraphQL endpoints instead of your normal REST endpoints. So on top of that, we've also built a brand new GraphQL engine that we believe is one of the fastest and most performant out there right now, and we built this from the ground up. We also added some really cool functionality, and this is probably one of my favorites, and it allows you to take one or many different services, including your RESTful APIs that you already have created, and stitch them together into a GraphQL service. And all of that is part of our universal data graph. And you'll be seeing lots of content around that in the coming weeks and months. I think everyone is going to be really blown away when they see how all of this works. So my recommendation would be follow us on our social media accounts or stay tuned on our site, tyke.io, where we're going to be publishing lots of details and tutorials on how this all works. So, looking at all of the great features of API management, it's very easy to see why it's an important part of the API journey. Who needs API management tools? Well, we believe that there's not a single developer or API program that would not benefit from including an API management platform into their API development and support stack. Now, we've went over all the highlights of a great API management platform and all those great features. I invite you to begin your journey by looking at Tyke. All the features we discussed in this presentation are included, and with our upcoming 3.0 release, we've really expanded our offering to include the GraphQL functionality that I mentioned, and we've really improved on our already great UX experience. If you enjoyed this presentation and you want to follow up on it or maybe get some more info, great. We're going to be sharing a blog actually that outlines all of this in more concise fashion and also points you directly towards the Tyke documentation for it. So stay tuned for that. That will be available on our site, tyke.io, and you should see some promotions for it on our socials as well. So thanks so much for dropping in, and we really hope to hear from you soon.